I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2015 May 13th City of Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee. First order of business is the roll call and the termination of a quorum.
Drew. Here. Weifenbach. Laurenti. Here. Nordstrom. And Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, next item is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda? Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Motion to approve. Motion by Laurenti, second by Drew. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now we have an agenda. Now it's time for general public comment. Now it's time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns on the council, any issue not currently on the agenda. Action will not be taken on any item not on the agenda except for a placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I currently have no speaker requests for general public comment. Does anybody wish to speak? Anything not on the agenda? Moving on to consent items numbers 1 through 11. I'm now going to open public comment on items consent items 1 through 11. I have one speaker request form on item number 3 from Laura Whitney from the Firehouse. Laura, do you wish to speak or do you wish to stand? Can you please step to the podium, ma'am? And you will have 3 minutes. Just identify yourself, your relationship, your address, relationship to the city. If Mr. Seffner just leave you alone, you can speak. There we go. No. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
All right. Hi, my name is Laura Whitney. I'm with the Firehouse Brewing Company at 610 Main Street. And all we are asking to do is we want to do what Bob calls a pitchfork fondue event behind our building in our parking lot every Thursday night. And to close off the alleyway there from our winery to the Main Street Square exit on 6th Street, which I believe is already closed because of summer nights events anyway. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it. It's real easy. Going to serve food and beer out there on our property.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. When that item comes up, if it's on the consent calendar, if it gets removed, and we can discuss it then, we'll have questions for you. Okay. If not, it'll stay on the consent. Darla, we're still. Okay. Thank you. Right. So just stand by. Okay. Thank you. Pardon me. I have no speaker request forms. Any more items on 1 through 11? Does anybody wish to speak on any of those items not currently have a piece of paper in yet? If not, I'm going to close public comment on items 1 through 11 and go to the council lights to see if anybody wants to remove any items for separate consideration. Mr. Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Item 11, please.
Item number 11, Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3.
Item number 3, Darla Drew.
I'm done. I was on 3.
Okay, Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like number 4 removed, please.
Number 4. Okay, I have items 1 through 11 with the exceptions of 3, 4, and 11. Is there anything else that needs to be removed? Entertain a motion to approve the balance.
So moved.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on to item number 3, which is approve the 2015 through 2020 CIP year 5-year plan. Motion by Nordstrom to approve, second by Drew and Darla.
Second.
You have the floor. Oh, who removed this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ron, you have the floor.
I removed it. I just wanted to ask the finance officer if she could. I sent her an email, and I just wanted her to be able to answer these questions on Monday in reference to so I'd give her some time to prepare for a question for Monday if she's fine with that. It got my email?
I got it.
Okay, perfect. No, I understand. If we can go over it Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renti, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. And I also have a question for the finance officer on this one as well.
Please.
Pauline, just a general question. This goes to the city's comprehensive plan, which we know we're getting further and further ingrained into, I should say. Was the CIP plan, is the comprehensive plan, is it reflected here in the 5-year plan for the CIP fund? I mean, was that looked at in determining the 5-year plan for the CIP?
Ms. Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is what we call the master sheet. 2015 through 19 is already programmed out, and we look at that every month at the CIP committee. 2020 is the new column on their spreadsheet, and honestly, at this point with this master spreadsheet, all we're looking at is the budgeting for the dollar amounts. Now, we are in the process of looking at the fifth-year plan for government facilities and also streets, drainage, MIP, all of that, where we are requiring the scorecards to be done as part of that priority-driven budgeting process, which would then incorporate into it the comprehensive plan. So although it wasn't involved with this spreadsheet specifically, it is still part of the CIP process.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion is to approve, I believe. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is approve a special event application for the Firehouse Brewing Company for concerts in the back patio. Chair recognizes Darla. Did you pull this, Darla? Sure. Or no, Weifenbach pulled this in. You pulled this? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I didn't take better notes. Chair recognizes Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been in contact with Wade in the City Attorney's Office. There is some concern on the serving of alcohol in this back patio area. In the past, we have required other license holders to actually go through and do a transfer where they expand where their license will actually be used. Because the firehouse has never used that back area to serve alcohol, there's some additional steps that we feel need to be taken before they are able to do so.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Chair recognizes Darla Drew. And on for you.
Could I speak to the representative from the firehouse?
You just re-identify yourself, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm Laura Whitney.
Just a couple quick questions. This is not just about food. You're going to run bands out there as well? Is that true?
After 9 p.m. After the
9?
events are done. It would just be a small, like, acoustic-style band that
Okay.
would be out there, because we'll also have our bands that always occur in our band shell in the patio.
It seems interesting that you already have an outdoor beer garden, whatever, and then you're going to put another one out back. Have any of your neighbors expressed concerns? Have you let them know?
Yeah, Dan Tribby with Prairie Edge said there should be no problems. He's supportive of it. As far as I know, that's the only neighbor that would be concerned at that time of day, after closing about 4 or 5 p.m. It would just go from our winery over, so it would just be between us and Prairie Edge, I believe.
So do you have to use some kind of fencing in that area then?
That's what he's asking to do, yes.
Okay.
My managing partner, Robert Fuchs, is on vacation with his family right now.
And I did ask the chief about a noise ordinance, and I guess we don't have any time constraints on the music outside, actually, downtown. So when would the music be over?
My contracts are at midnight.
Midnight?
Have to be done by
Okay.
midnight, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Ma'am, if you could stay there, that would be great. I'm looking at the application, and it does say that for these events, you do plan to serve alcohol. Is that correct?
Yes, just wine and beer.
Okay, so then I have a question for the Finance Director, if I can, Chair.
Please.
Pauline, can you reiterate the process then? Typically, because there is alcohol involved here, we're kind of circumventing the process. You've kind of alluded to that already. What needs to be done, and how long do we need to send this back to get this done properly?
Thank you for the question. There's a couple different ways that we can do this, honestly. One is to do, even though that the name isn't changing and the legal description stays the same, we still need to expand the use of the liquor license for the outdoor patio area to the rear of the facility. We've required that verbiage on the licenses for all the places at Main Street Square as well, and the shops at Main Street Square. That you would have to set a hearing date and actually have the hearing through council. So that takes 2 council meetings after we receive the application. There may also be an issue in that regard if we go that route with getting a conditional use permit. I believe the firehouse is grandfathered in, so they would actually have to go through the CUP process because they're also expanding their use in that regards. If that's, and I haven't talked to Brett since Monday morning, so if things have happened since then, I apologize. The other issue, or the other way that they could go about this, and Wade and I talked very briefly Monday morning, was to possibly apply for special event permits for that time frame because it's not technically a permanent use, and they could, as a current alcohol license holder, they could still apply for a special event permit. That's $50 for each time they want to do that, and that would also take council action as far as approving the special event permit for alcohol.
So just them checking the box, and then apparently this goes to the police department, and this was done April 24th, them checking the box, that, you saying there's something additional they would need to file besides this special event application?
To be able to serve the alcohol, yes.
Is that communicated to them in any way, shape, or form by staff when they see that the box is checked, yes, we want to serve alcohol?
I typically don't see these unless they hit an agenda. I will tell you that Chief Jagaris emailed it out. I can't remember if it was last week or the week beforehand, and we've had correspondence back and forth where I verbalized my concerns. I just got verification from Wade on Monday morning that yes, that they would either need to redo their alcohol license application or do a special event license. So I was just made aware of it Monday, and I apologize, but I've been out of the office for a day and a half, so I haven't had any time to do any follow-up with that.
So continuing this for how long? What do we need to get this done right? I don't think we should be stepping out of the process to just approve this. But are we approving alcohol for approving this right now?
My opinion, and Wade can jump in if you want, you can approve this contingent, that the alcohol being served is only contingent upon either the special event license or the alcohol license being expanded. That way it doesn't prohibit them from getting people out there, starting the process. And honestly, if they already have an alcohol license, we technically don't have to submit a license for it or have a public hearing for it for a special events license. At least that's how it used to be. And so it speeds up the process a little bit by having just where the council would approve that separately from this license.
So we are not approving alcohol, or maybe I need to ask the city
Depends
attorney?
on your vote. I mean, I guess at this time I would say to go ahead and approve the special event permit with the alcohol only being served upon approval of the special event licenses. And Wade, maybe you have a better way of wording that than I.
I'm going to go to Brett Limbaugh from Community Planning just because he had his light on first.
Yeah, just as a clarification for the conditional use permit, the original one was approved, I think, back in 1997, and it was approved for the property rather than for specific locations on the property, so we don't need to go and amend that. Generally, we do, because usually it's specific to a portion of a building or a patio or something. In this case, it's for the whole property, so we won't need to have that step in this process, but there is still the licensing requirements.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Chair recognizes Wade Bird, City Attorney.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, by approving the special event application, you're not necessarily approving alcohol. There has to be they want to serve alcohol. It says it's on.
Okay.
Just not close enough. It says they want to serve alcohol, but just approving this is approving the event and not necessarily the alcohol. I think it is a good idea, as Pauline said, to have a stipulation on that, as long as the alcohol licenses are all in place at the time of the event. There's a couple of different ways to do this, and I had left a message for Bob Fuchs. I didn't know he was out of town, but I just wanted to get some more particulars, and maybe we could visit after the meeting too and talk about a couple of options. Depending on how the alley is used, the special event license could cover that as well, and they could submit an application and even get it on Monday night's council. But
So this doesn't go into the public right away at this point, does it? It's just up to their back of their building. Am I correct?
I think they had a portion of the alley was going to be used. The alley was blocked off, and a portion of it was going to be used.
Chair recognizes.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if we'll be putting tables in the alleyway, just so there wasn't traffic coming to and from, so to not to endanger anybody. Or.
Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just
Like a motion somewhere, if you could possibly squeeze one in there.
oh, motion is to continue? Is that what the attorney is recommending?
Approve it.
Approve it
Yeah.
with stipulations?
Sure.
Okay.
You can go ahead. Do we have a second?
Yep.
Second by Drew. Motion by Nordstrom and second by Drew Mason. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the assistance on the motion. What I've got is a couple of questions, maybe one for staff to start with, is that I'm reading over the form that says for the office use only, and it's sent to legal and finance, and those portions are blank, and then on the police department reviewed, all I've got is an initials and a review date, but I'm not seeing any comments that are attached. Is that possible, or is that an oversight, or do we need to change the form? So we're not running through a process like
I'm not
what
sure
we're
if you-
experiencing.
Who should we read? Anybody think they can address that question for Mr. Nordstrom adequately? Pauline? Assumption?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in this instance, the PD had no problem with this special event license as it was requested, where it would shut down part of the alley, that type of thing. This is not typically routed through my office, so unless you want it to be routed through other departments, it's really the recommendation of the PD typically on the special event permits, this type of special event permit. And so if you want, there were no written comments, I guess, really to be had from the PD on this.
Chair recognizes, sorry, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And then I've got one more question for Lori. Laura, yeah. Just want to clarify on the use of the alley. I just want to make sure that if there's any emergency vehicles need to make their way through there, they have that access to it, so there's no barriers, if you will.
It would be similar to what they use or even the same as what they use at the end of 6th Street, between, with the alley and 6th Street at the moment. So it would just be easy to move and go. We wouldn't be having tables there or people to get out of the way. Just to block it off, like I said, so people weren't driving down the alley where people were sitting, and backing up. And
Okay.
if you understand what I guess I'm trying to get at.
Yep, I
Yeah,
just
we don't
want to
plan
make
on
sure.
putting tables out there or anything like that. Everything that we'll have should be on just our property.
Yep, okay.
From what
And
I understand.
just so everybody understands that
Yeah.
if we have emergency access, we get it, so.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to continue to allow staff to have the time to look into the ramifications of what we're trying to do here today.
Motion is to continue, so the floor.
And then I'd like to speak.
Continue to when, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Continue to when?
Pardon?
Continue to when?
I'd say whatever time frame they need to get 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks? Next Legal and Finance Committee, which will be
May 27th.
May 27th. Okay, just for clarification for the petitioner, when did you plan on starting this, just out of curiosity?
The first night of Summer Nights, which is what, May 20?
So they're going to need 30 days after this is passed just making sure. Go ahead, you have the floor, sir.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. And the reason I'm speaking on this is that the special, I prefer to have the businesses downtown that own the liquor licenses have this opportunity to do this, but we continue to allow special permit after special permit after special permit. Alcohol consumption in our streets is at probably an all-time high. And I'm not sure that I can support it in the end, but the state at some point in time went back and allowed this downtown streets to push the stuff into the sidewalks and those types of things, and now we're pushing them out the back alleys, and I just want to have everybody have an opportunity to look at it, so thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? The motion is to continue for 2 weeks now. Just once again, ma'am, you were planning on starting the 28th of May?
Yes, I believe
Okay,
so.
so this will, and how long will it take?
Because it has to go from us to council.
I'm sorry? Right. Okay, all right, just making it clear. All right, so anyway, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So your item will be at City Council on Monday night on the consent calendar. No. Oh, we thought we continued. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's going to City Council, next Legal and Finance. Too many sidebar conversations, I got distracted. Apologize. Anyway, so if you have any questions, you can talk to Nate Wade after the He should be able to direct you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 11, excuse me, is the authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a contract for construction of public improvements through private development for our tax increment district number 75 between Technology Housing 2 LLC and the city of Rapid City. And the chair recognizes Mr. Ron Weifenbach. Did you pull this? Mr. Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I pulled this item because I had voted against the tax increment financing in the first place, and I just wanted to reiterate my reasons behind it. I should say reason, but primarily is just that the fact that there has to be a better way, and I know we have looked at some various different vehicles, but we've done nothing. But there has to be a better way than using public dollars for private development, especially where we are using public dollars or taxpayers' money for parts of a development that are not public improvements, and we've done that quite a few times on TIFs. So we need a new vehicle. We need one that doesn't put private development on the backs of the taxpayers. So I'll be voting no against this. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this item, this is all the houses that are with the windows knocked out, and I think our police and our fire department use this area to train in. And then I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that they're still standing. I mean, if we went through there and destructed the houses, and then we really didn't have a real short-term plan to get rid of them. And I've had several calls from constituents in that area that these places are being inhabited by people, and sometimes they're bringing little items to the neighborhood there. And they thought that one of the reasons I think this TIF passed was to get that lighted area taken care of. So I have contacted some people at City Hall, and I think our growth management director had spoke on a little bit. I think there is a plan now finally, but if we're going to do something like that in the future, let's have a plan to get rid of them right away. I mean, because we've made them, they're empty now. Everything's accessible in there for anybody, and it's bringing a different element to that part of the Rapid City over there, and it's filtering out, and people are really getting frustrated. So the sooner we can get these things bulldozed, if there's a way that we can participate to get it done quicker, it would be very well taken. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Drew, second by Nordstrom. You have the floor. Darla?
I'd like to see this go to the council for a full vote. I know of some situations that are going on with this particular development project, and we might want to look into this before we vote it on Monday, because there are some situations that are happening there that are interesting, but I wanted to get it to approval so we could get a vote.
Okay. Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure who this question needs to go to, but are we having an issue with, say, for example, squatters or people going into the area now that shouldn't be going into the area, meaning that, and I'm going to use the word squatters, and I don't know if that's the appropriate term, but are people using those facilities? That's just kind of an open question right now.
Chair recognizes the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The houses in question are a danger. They are a mess. We had detectives in there just the other day. There's human waste in the houses. There's holes in the floors that people will fall through. Recently, we had a crime committed where a bunch of beer was stolen. The beer was recovered in those houses by people that go in there and squat. You're right, they're full of squatters, and the police department can go in and chase them out, and they're back in there 15, 20 minutes later, and we can't sit there and make sure that nobody comes in there. But we get calls to that area. Those homes are a danger. My fear is that a kid could get in there and fall through some of those holes that are in the flooring. Somebody could get hurt. A fire could easily be started in those things. It is a terrible eyesore. It is a bad, bad situation to be having right there in the heart of our city.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain. I guess this next question will be going to the attorney's office. Is there any recourse that we have for, say, expediting this process? Is there any available tools that we have to get the developer to move on this?
Chair recognizes
I can
Carla.
speak to that.
Yes.
We have spoken with, we've been in communication with the developer, with the property owner, and we've been told that they have bid out the demolition of of all of their properties. Right now, they're doing asbestos remediation, but they informed us that they will start demolishing the buildings on May 22nd, the week of May 22nd. So we're close to a resolution, and we're close to getting rid of the houses.
Thank you for the reminder about the asbestos, and I'm sure there's some other issues going on with that, but yeah, I think that's the biggest delay is because of the asbestos abatement and safeguards that we need to handle through that. So thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, the motion is to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Chair votes yes, so it passes with 1 no from Mr. Laurenti, is that correct? Okay, items numbers 12 through 20, non-consent items. 12 through 20, I'm now open to public comment on those items. I currently have quite a few speaker request forms. I'm going to start numerically for a change. Start with number 13, Mr. John Brewer on item number 13. Sir, if you'd approach the podium, you have 3 minutes. I'm sure you know the drill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak to you today. Item number 13 is a precursor to item number 14, the second reading of the ordinance to change up the CIP committee for the city. And in the rewriting of the ordinance, the item with regard to the makeup of the committee is something that the Planning Commission discussed at some length at the conclusion of their meeting earlier this month. And as you know from the ordinance, it's been changed so that the ordinance speaks to 5 alder people as the voting CIP committee. And that's fine. I'm not here to ask for Planning Commission votes on the committee. However, at CIP, the $125 million that is currently budgeted to be spent over the next 5 years on the infrastructure in this community. It is the Planning Commission that is a bit of a gatekeeper to the development and growth of the city. We're the keeper of the comprehensive plan that we spent 2 years developing and mapping out the future of our city. Those items come to us in platting, growth, developments before they come to the council. So having served on the CIP committee for the past 3 years, I recognize that the issues we deal with there, roads, streets, sewers, are all complementary and in part and parcel important to how the Planning Commission deals with approving plats and city development. So I'm here today to ask in the second reading whether the committee makeup might include a liaison from the Planning Commission. None of us at the Commission and in our discussion asked to be a voting member of that, but we'd like to be written in as part of that committee so that when we come back to the Planning Commission meetings, we're current and a part of that discussion with regard to CIP. It's really important. It's all connected, and we ask for your consideration on the makeup in the ordinance with a liaison from the Planning Commission. So I'm here today to ask for that. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Brewer, and I'm sure you'll be standing by when we get that item.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, up next we have for item number 15, 16, and 17, Mr. Jeff Loggy. You step to the podium, sir. Introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Loggy, builder developer here in Rapid City, as well as the government affairs chairman for the Black Hills Home Builders Association. I'm going to speak on all 3 of these issues. On on item 15, the adoption of the 2012 code. We met last night briefly, and we feel the 2012 code should move forward, but perhaps take out the areas that include items 16 and 17 at this point. Regarding item 16, which is the soils issue, we're going to put together a working group of builders, soils professionals, a representative from the city building inspection and perhaps, any other group, not a huge group, to come up, define what the limits are of the city, how the whole process is going to work, maybe define it a little closer. And Mr. Whalen brought up a point here earlier to me. There's some critical words that need to be added into that section, which I think are probably the most important words in regards to the slabs in the heaving and shifting soils. As far as item 17, which is the fire protection of unfinished spaces.
Item number 16, sir. Did
I mix them around?
No, I'm just
My
correcting
bad.
just correcting
All
for the
right,
record.
17 is the soil. 16 now is the, they're always in a different order. The fire protection, we met with a couple representatives from the fire department, including Mr. Billings. See, look at that, Mr. Billings. And they want to do some further research. We're going to work with them on that to try to come up with a common sense way to address this issue. So that's kind of what we're looking at is table the other two issues or delay them for a period of time here, whether it be a month. I don't know how much time the fire department needs, but we could table and bring them back once we have the information put together.
Okay. All right, Mr. Luggy, you have anything okay, further? Up next, Chair recognizes Robert Temmie on item number 17. Sir, you can just identify yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. I'm Robert Temmie with American Engineering here in town. We're geotechnical consultants. I've been here in Rapid for about 24 years, and I just want to bring out the expansive soils, rewriting of that one. That is a problem that I think needs to be addressed. Now, how you address it or rewrite it, I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll work with home builders and whatever to get that resolved. But right now, it seems that what we're seeing is somebody will build a house, the home buyer buys the house. They have about a year of warranty with that builder, and then about 2 or 3 years, or it's a crapshoot on that. They have the problems, and the only recourse the homeowner has is to sue it out, and he goes back after the home builder. And I've seen the costs from these cases run anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 to repair the cost. So my only thought is that if you want to do the soils work for these lots and address that the city or the building inspection, somebody has to have a buy-in and put some teeth into it, because our reports, this is our business and we do it for commercial buildings all the time and whatever, but ours are recommendations, and I need to see that somebody's going to follow those recommendations. Otherwise, what's going to happen is companies like mine just get moved to the forefront, and we become the people that are sued because they have some problems. And I'll stand behind the recommendations that we come up with, but I need some enforcement from the building department or something that's going to enforce that these things are met and done. And it's our call whether we want to be involved in that, and we can make that decision at the end, but once we see what the rendition is. But it is a problem. We have probably 1 or 2, I would say 1 phone call a week from residents that have expansive or shifting soils. And it's going to be a cost if you're going to do the work and see that doesn't happen and eliminate that will be a cost. And because if it's our firm, we're going to charge the building home builder. The home builder is going to charge the owner, pass it along to the owner. So there is costs involved in that thing. So I think it needs to have some enforcement, and I think we need to come up with some guidelines to make it work. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Chair will recognize Mr. Dave Ashbridge on 15, 16, and 7, sir. I'm sure you know the drill. Identify yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you today. I'm here as the chairman of the Rapid City Building Board of Appeals, which we're charged with the responsibility of addressing these codes and bringing recommendations to the council for adoption. And yesterday morning, the board met. We understand that it's out of our hands at this point as far as how this plays out, but I think all the board and myself would strongly recommend that you at least pass the 2012 code with the exception of item 16 and item 17. That would give us the opportunity, not the board, but the opportunity for all those parties involved in coming up with a solution that's viable to all. So I would appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashbridge. I'm sure all you gentlemen will be sticking around for the main event, so if you have any questions, we'll be asking you later. Up next, we have item number 19. We're going to Mr. Tom Allen, which is the hobby beekeeping ordinance for anybody that's listening in the audience at home. If you'd, sir, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Allen with the Wannabe Hobby Beekeepers, and I'm a beekeeper here in Rapid City. We do not agree with the addition of fencing requirement or screening requirement. The way the current ordinance was passed was sufficient in that the beekeeper was being held responsible for positioning the hives the correct way so that they weren't the bees weren't flying into the neighbor's right away to cause a problem. The addition of the amendment, or the 6055, is a hardship in that every beekeeper's backyard is different. The way the changes are written, it's very hard to see how it can work, where we have a 25-foot setback and we have 6-foot high screening going 10 feet each direction, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's unusable the way it's written. Excuse me, the way it's written, and that should not be passed the way it's written. I think the way the original ordinance was written, providing for the beekeeper to be responsible for the screening was adequate. So we would prefer that the ordinance not be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we go to Mr. Jerry Owens on the same item, number 19, on hobby beekeeping, sir. You have 3 minutes. If you identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Owens. I'm a hobby beekeeper here in Rapid City. I've been a hobby beekeeper here for about 13 years. We have not had any incidences with bees in the last 13 years until some guy found a bee in his swimming pool. And that brought us to the council. It could have been taken care of by neighbor to neighbor, addressing the problem and putting up, and this applies directly to this ordinance that we're trying to pass here, a regulation, in that there were trees there that could have been established to make sure that those bees didn't get over into that yard if they had talked it through, which they did not. In this community and around this part of the state, I probably know more about bees than anybody, or at least as much about bees as anybody, because that's what I do, is I develop new hobby beekeepers, people that are interested in keeping bees, I sell highs, and I instruct people on how to use them, where to use them, and what to do with them. And I find that this addition to the ordinances, it's going to drive my bees out of Rapid City. There's no way that I can comply with this and any inspector that would come to my property, because he could find probably 20 different ways that he did not agree with what I'm trying to do to prevent my bees from flying into traffic or to personnel or whatever. I think this is a very poor regulation, and I ask that it be dropped from the beekeeping regulations here in Rapid City. Thank you.
Thank you. First time with this microphone, evidently. Okay, I know no further speaker requests on any of the items numbers 12 through 20. Does anybody wish to speak on any of those items that has not filled out a speaker request form? Okay, I'm going to close public comment on items 12 through 20. I'm going to go to number 12. Michelle Poling from the Silver Lining Creamery, request to allow mobile ice cream cart in downtown area. Ma'am, would you push the podium and identify yourself?
My name's Michelle Poling, and I own the Silver Lining Creamery that's located in the Main Street Square. And what I'm coming before you today is to ask you for permission for us to take our mobile ice cream cart through the downtown core as well as through Legacy Commons to sell ice cream to businesses, employees, and to families at the common area. You have a picture, I believe, in front of you of our ice cream cart, and so you can see it's very mobile. It's about 2.5 feet wide by 3 feet long, so it's easy to get around, easy to push. It wouldn't be anything that would be cumbersome on the sidewalks or through the commons. We would just be doing that in the afternoon as well as possibly on Saturdays at the park. We think this would add some more vibrancy to our beautiful downtown as well as kind of that hometown feel of a ice cream cart going through the downtown area.
Okay. Anybody, Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
Just a quick question to the police, if I could.
Sorry, Captain.
Captain, yes. Do you know if Ms. Poling has had a background check so that she can go in and, I think we require that with most ice cream vendors, correct?
Correct. That is, I believe it's correct from ice cream vendors for trucks, but this isn't a truck. So I don't know how it would fit into the ordinance of an ice cream vendor truck. I would have to ask Wade about that.
Chair recognizes Wade Nyberg, City Attorney.
That's correct. It doesn't fit within the ice cream truck ordinance. We have a licensing scheme for trucks. A couple of things with that is that well, number one, it's not a truck, but the other requirement in that ordinance is that the trucks are only allowed to be in residential areas, and so this would be a change. It's downtown instead of a residential area. And basically, in order to accomplish this, we'd need to do an ordinance change. Right now we have a prohibition on any peddling from the right-of-way. You can't use the right-of-way to sell. That's the general rule. There's a few exceptions. The ice cream truck is one. There's also an exception for special events where I think it's the Central Business District. You can move a table out on your sidewalk and sell in front of if you have an established business. So we would need to come up with an ordinance to address this.
So what you're saying is that the other vendors downtown, the hot dog salesmen, those kinds of people, they wouldn't be required to have any kind of a background check either?
Right now, if you have a designated spot, that would be the other. If you had a sidewalk vending license and a permit for 1 or 2 or 6 spots or whatever it is downtown, if you'd have identified those and gone through the process, you can set up in those spots and sell. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if they have a background check or not.
I don't believe they do.
I don't think they do.
But they're not mobile.
Right. That would be the difference. Is they don't move. They're at the spot. They don't travel.
Maybe we should reconsider this, at least the ordinance, since this is kind of a new thing for us to be looking at, It could be a change in the ordinance with mobile vendors that are not trucks.
I believe we're looking at it. Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach. I'm looking for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to direct staff to make an ordinance that allows them to sell ice cream in the bid district area in downtown.
Motion by Weifenbach, second by Drew. Sir, you still have the floor.
I just, I think if you were selling alcohol out of this cart, we'd probably would approve it today. But ice cream.
May I make a comment? One thing that we are doing is we have an established location downtown, so we would just be taking that out. So it's not like it's something new.
Right, and I guess that's important to know. I don't know if everybody knows that she runs the coffee shop downtown, and it's been successful downtown, and it's really added to the business of downtown there. So I'm all for it, and I think that Wade or the crew can drop something that's simple for us to swallow. So I appreciate it.
Chair will recognize Mr. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, I support what you're doing and what you're trying to do. I know you a little bit, and especially your history and so on. So please bear with us, go through this ordinance process. It's probably going to take 6 weeks to get this whole thing done. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll get it done in time for some of your events that you're trying to attempt to do.
Perfect.
I have a question for the city attorney, please. We don't currently allow this is a bicycle cart, I assume.
No, it's, were you given?
Is this a push cart? Okay.
It's a push cart, yep.
Okay. I guess I can't really see because I'm getting old and losing my eyes here. Okay, well then, does this interfere in any way with our policy for mobile?
It's not motorized.
No, it's not.
So-
It's completely push.
But I don't think that's probably an issue as far as being on the sidewalk.
Okay,
Is
just
that
want to
your
make sure.
question?
Yeah, I thought, I couldn't see the rear end of the cart, so I didn't know if there was a bicycle behind it that pushed it around or not. That was what was explained to me originally, so. Anyway, okay, the motion is to direct staff to create an ordinance to allow downtown vending of ice cream and just ice cream? Ice cream in the downtown corridor, or bid district, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Mr. Laurenti.
Well, I just would caution it. I guess I have a question for the city attorney first before I.
By all means.
Wait, are we making it too narrow? I mean, is there a better way to word that it's not just for ice cream? Maybe we need a little broader ordinance that deals with non-motorized vending in downtown. I mean, I don't know what the proper wording is, but I don't know that we want to pick out one specific food type. So
This is health food, so it's okay.
Well, I probably have a couple questions too. Just as far as direction, are there other types like coffee or other things that you'd like? Just some of the parameters, I guess. Do you want them to have do you want them to have a business downtown, or can this be anybody? That's usually one of the issues, like with food trucks, if it's competition for businesses in that district, if they have a physical location, is it okay? Or if they don't have one, is it okay or not okay?
If I might interject just for a second, I believe some of the discussion we've had about this prior is that we need a comprehensive look at all mobile food in the city. Well, you just described food trucks and things like that. We don't have any ordinance currently regulating any of those. Is it sale in the public right of way? Is that correct, Nate? Wade? So we need to come up with a comprehensive ordinance to cover all of those, not just and so to answer your question about specificity, of this particular motion. Are you looking for something a little broader maybe to work on?
Well, I guess, we can come up with something just for ice cream carts in downtown. If you've had task force to look at other issues when they're larger. If you want to look into that idea for food trucks, mobile carts, whatever, we could do something in the interim for just ice cream and look at the bigger issue. I know there's a downtown plan in the works, a central business district kind of component of the comprehensive plan. So
if I might make a motion, I make a suggestion just to speed this along and clarify a little better. Could we just continue this item to council without recommendation, where we can give the attorney and people a chance to talk a little bit, so we're not trying to dictate what we're going to include at this point? Would that be okay with
That's
anybody?
fine. Mm-hmm. I just think we're making it too complicated.
Yeah,
So,
I
but-
just think the discussion up here is good, but I think we need to have a little more direction for the staff, and I think we're just all kind of brainstorming, which is good. But so if we could get the motion maker to either withdraw or amend their motion
I'll
to that
just have a
effect.
friendly amendment to just move it to the council so we can have a broader conversation and hopefully in between people can come up with any questions, but let's just not complicate it.
No, but I just think we're complicating it the more we talk, so if we could do that, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so the motion is to move to council without recommendation. Any further discussion? If you're, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just have a couple more things. It's my understanding that back in the 80s, there was a sandwich cart that went around downtown, and it was going around to all the businesses and selling sandwiches. My other understanding is there was a ice cream or some kind of novelty cart that was around in Sioux Park a few years ago, and I'm not sure if they were under a certain ordinance that I don't know about. And then with that, I also understand and I respect the 4 to 6 weeks time period, and was wondering if we could have a proposal that we could get permission to do it with a temporary permit.
I don't believe that's possible, but I'm not sure. You have to ask Wade Nyberg.
Well, currently it's against the ordinance, so we don't really have a permit we can give. They're just, there's the sidewalk vending. I mean, we could get a location, a license and a permit for a location or 2 locations or however many, but as far as the mobile aspect, we just don't have a permit for that right now. We just have an ordinance that doesn't allow it. And
So, ma'am, this item will be back on Monday night's agenda. You'll have a chance to talk to all the parties involved, and we're going to get as much information as we can for that night, and then we can have a better idea of what going forward is going to look like. There's just a certain amount of time, unfortunately, that we have to take to consider items. Thankfully, it slows us down, believe me. You don't want us to make items too quickly. But, Mr. Weifenbach, did you want to speak? No?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to say to Wade that there is an ordinance somewhere that allows for vending in the parks and whatever, so I don't know if that's maybe helped you relatively, so for Monday night, we have some place to stand. Thank you.
So, ma'am, are you able to come back Monday night?
Yes.
Okay, and if, after the meeting, if you just get with legal.
Okay.
And they can guys kind of give you some better guidance, I'd appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is currently to send to the council without recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13 is Linda Marchand. Did I say that correctly? Yep. Planning Commission Chairman, request to add Planning Commission liaison to the Capital Improvements Committee.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Nordstrom, second by Drew, and Mr. Laurenti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I was hoping to make a motion. I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion that it include a member from the Planning Commission as a liaison.
That's the item.
Okay, that's, okay, so, all right, I just wanted to make sure that
You
we
want
had
two,
that
you
in
want
there.
2 planning commissioners?
Just one. I just wanted to make sure that they were involved on that, so.
I'll make a motion to teach reading. Okay, up next, we're going to go to Mr. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify, the way I'm reading this is it's identifying Linda, but in this case, it's designates the commission chair as the person that's going to be the liaison. So,
I believe she has to make the formal request as she is the chairperson. I think that's just why her name's there.
yes, right. And so I'm agreeable to that because she's attended several of the CIP meetings and has very good offer, suggestions, recommendations, and input. So I sincerely endorse the bringing in Linda from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay, Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this a restructure of the CIP committee itself, or is it just adding this liaison?
Brett Lim, who answers that question best? Pauline Sumption, Finance Committee Officer.
Number 14 is actually restructuring the committee as far as who are voting members, because right now there are some department directors that are also voting members, some that aren't, even though they have something at risk by not being able to vote. Wade actually did the amendments to that ordinance for the committee. The committee sat down together and discussed them as a whole and brought forward the recommendations. But if there's more specifics you want to know about, I'd let you talk to Wade.
Okay, that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, the motion is to approve on item number 13. Is any further discussion that wants to happen in front of me? Thank you. Any further discussion? Item number 13, motion to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 14, second reading of recommendation of ordinance 6048, an ordinance to revise membership and procedures of the Capital Improvements Committee by amending section 3.16.090 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
We have a simultaneous motion to approve by Nordstrom and Drew. Second by Drew. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15 is introduction, first reading of ordinance 6009 to adopt 2012 International Residential Code by amending Chapter 15.13 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Weifenbach, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 16, introduction, first reading of ordinance 6049. First reading of ordinance 6049 to amend provisions in the International Residential Code to address fire protection of floors by amending section 15.13.280 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to ask the fire department here how much time we're going to need, and if you can let us, I guess, first of all, how much time are we going to need to come bring this together where we've got this compromise involved? So we can continue it. I prefer to continue it rather than table the item. So.
Chair recognizes Tim Billings, Fire Marshal.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. After our meeting with the home builders on Monday, we're looking at a couple of different products. And so we're probably looking at 30 to 45 days, somewhere in that range, to evaluate some other options to be able to meet the provisions of that code section and try to come to some compromise on that. So I'm going to say 30 to 45, 60 at the outside, but I think we can accomplish it within 30 to 45.
60 seems to be either 60 or 30, because I don't think we do 45 around here, do we? I don't know. Anyway, it's on the floor, sir.
Well, and that's my main concern, and I guess I'm looking now for a motion to continue for 30 days. I think they could probably do it in 30 days. If not, we can continue it a couple more weeks at that point. So, thank you.
Chair recognizes Rich Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at my calendar to make the motion to continue to the July 24th meeting.
July 24th, Legal and Finance Committee.
Excuse me, did I say July? June.
June 24th,
I'm
Legal
sorry.
and Finance Committee. 2015?
Yes.
Okay. Then June 24th, 2015, Legal and Finance Committee. Is that the correct? Nope. Swing and a miss. The 1st of July, 2015. Is that correct? Is that okay with you, motion maker?
That is correct, yes, July 1st. So it wasn't...
July 1st.
I wasn't too far off, thank you.
Okay, so the July 1st, 2015, is that okay with the fire marshal? Sounds good. All right, any further discussion? The motion was by Nordstrom, second was by Drew. Any further discussion? Continue this item to the July 1st, 2015 Legal and Finance Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is introduction, first reading of ordinance 6050 to amend provisions in the International Residential Code to address compressible, shifting, and expansive soils by amending Chapter 15.13 of the Rapid Municipal Code. Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I have a question for Mr. Whalen, if you would, please.
Mr. Whalen, if you could please identify yourself for the record, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike Whalen. I'm at your disposal.
Mr. Whalen, it was suggested by Mr. Loggy that there's some language that you're looking for as well, and I just wanted to ask you if you are supporting the continuation of this so that some additional compromise can be made and some other substantive additions made as well. I just wanted to hear your opinion on the continuation.
Yes, sir. Give me just a moment. I'll grab that proposed ordinance.
Okay.
The proposed ordinance overlooks, I think, a very important aspect. And yes, I would ask for the continuance in order to make this correction. It's a fairly minor drafting change, but currently it says the proposed residential code 401.4 soil preparation. Compressible, shifting, and expansive soils are located throughout Rapid City, and foundations placed on such soil require appropriate site preparation. And it goes on to say a geotechnical evaluation shall be provided on all new one and two family dwellings. The problem I have is that the site preparation is limited to foundations. It clearly should include slabs, and oftentimes interior footings are poured monolithically, that is to say, as part and parcel of the slab. And thus, to omit the slab portion, slab being more troublesome than foundation, foundation walls, of course, have the weight of the residents on those outside foundation walls, and so they tend to counteract. It is the slabs then that are more troublesome, and I believe Mr. Temme and Mr. Loggy would agree with me 100% on that.
Okay, Mr. Whalen, and I appreciate that. I'm not wanting to cut you off, but
No, that's fine.
obviously we're going to vote on this Monday night. But I just wanted to make sure that you were on board with the continuation to make a better ordinance here. So I appreciate your input.
I am, and I'll certainly donate my conference room if we need to meet.
Thank you, Mr. Loggy. If you could, please, I have a question for you as well.
Careful.
That hurt.
Sir, thank you for working on this. I appreciate it. The compromise, I think, is obviously important for all parties. I support continuing it. However, I'd like to see some action, but I'm a little disappointed that we haven't seen. I thought we had a compromise on this particular issue already, but it doesn't sound like we're there yet. My question to you is, how long do you believe it will take to get this put together so that it can get back to the council so that we're getting this passed?
Oh, I think on the meetings, we'll be kind of working simultaneous on the two issues. 30 days seems right by the time we get it through. Because it will have to have some legal input, because we're going to come up with, essentially we're going to come up with the guidelines of what the city's role is, and that is not defined in this right now. So I think that is very important to this. I believe the compromise, at the home builders, we're somewhat split, but we know the issues that are out there, and I think it's just a matter of tweaking it and defining it a little clearer.
Okay, very good, and I appreciate your time. So I'm hoping somebody will make a motion to continue this within 30 days as well. I'm looking forward to getting both of these back. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ron Wyfenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion to continue to the same date, which I believe was
July
July
1st,
1st.
2015.
Yep. And I'd like to retain.
Motion by Wyfenbach, second by Laurenti. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate, you can see how the conversation evolves, and we always sit up here and have us say, well, where were you? So we understand that the conversation evolves and that we're going from zero to something. So, and I appreciate Mr. Whalen's tenacity in sticking with this. I think it's important that we bring something forward that we can all live with and that makes sense. And I think Robert from A&E reported, he kind of pointed out some issues that we're going to have. And I'm okay with that. I just think that if we go to something, and we're going to have some issues as we go, and I think it's got to be enforced. There's got to be a way that there's no CO or whatever it is if this doesn't transpire, because there's too many people out there that's buyer beware, and they're getting their tails kicked. I think he mentioned one call a week. That might even be somewhat of an underestimate. That's just his office, not including all the other people who are frustrated that don't know what to do or who to call or anything that they can do. So I would say that obviously we know what we got to do. We got to find out a way to test it. We got to find out a way to enforce it. And so those are two of the top things that we got to come back to the council with some side of recommendations. So that should give us plenty of time. I'm willing to move forward on something. So I want people to know that I'm gonna push going forward with something, and hopefully we'll have an answer that works for everybody, and understanding that if there's opportunities to eliminate some of these codes that don't make sense where we can shift some of the costs, we need to bring those forward too, because what we're doing and continually to do, and I mentioned this when we talked about the fire code, is we continue to pile on and we don't take off some of the goofy stuff that makes no sense but costs a lot of money. I would say maybe look at moving the sidewalks forward, changing the lots, giving people an opportunity to roll the curbs, stuff that they could save a little bit of money to offset some of all these other costs that we keep adding on. And if all you have to do is go in these neighborhoods and look at these sidewalks and these curbs that run, the boulevards that run in between, it's ridiculous. And it costs a lot of money to knock those driveways back out and put them in. So whatever we need to do to get this done. Thank you.
Okay, Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with what Alderman Wyfenbach has brought forward already. And I want to also tell the folks too that I'm glad we're taking our time with this process. And unfortunately, complicated issues like this do need more time, and I'm glad more people are getting involved in this and taking a real interest in the total spectrum of what we have to do, and I agree with Mr. Timmy about how do we do the enforcement. And I hope you folks that are on the working task force will come up with some answers for us on that. And good luck on coming back on July 1st and having everything resolved by then. So thank you.
Okay, the motion is to continue to the July 1st, 2015 Legal and Finance Committee. Is any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 19 is item number 18. Resolution 2015-050, establishing existing fees to be charged in 2015 for various licenses, permits, and applications. Approved by Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 19, introduction, first reading of ordinance 6055 to require fencing on flyaways within hobby beekeeping regulations by amending section 6.20.20 of the Rapid Municipal Code. Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I had one question for the city attorney, if I may, please.
You may.
Wade, I just want to clarify that. Carla, absolutely. That's fine. You're the expert on this. You've been involved with it, so I apologize to Wade there. I just want to clarify and make sure in my mind that all we're doing here with this, we've already approved the beekeeping, am I correct? This is only a separate part that says they are now required for these flyaways.
That's right. If you'll recall at council on first reading, there was a motion, I think Richie, you made it, to bring forward a provision on second reading related to fencing. That was not done, and I'll take responsibility for it. But because there was that direction from council related to fencing, we felt like we needed to bring it forward at this point. I do apologize for extending the conversation about beekeeping, and I apologize to the beekeepers for making them come again. But that's why this amendment is before you today.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments as well, because that is exactly how I feel. We've approved it. The beekeepers are unfortunately being dragged into this further because we have government officials who believe they know much better about beekeeping than beekeepers who've been doing it for decades in Rapid City. So I'm hoping that somebody will make a motion to deny this so that we can get this taken care of. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move to deny.
Motion by Weifenbach, second by Laurenti. And Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
This is another one I'm going to take my time on because, Carla, you've done a lot of research on this, and I was kind of relying upon your expertise that you've gained over this short period of time on this. So if you can elaborate just a little bit what that hardship will be by the installation of this fence.
Well, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on bees. I would say I have read a lot of ordinances that have to do with hobby beekeeping. And what I would say is that this provision before you is one I saw in many ordinances. I think there is a model hobby beekeeping ordinance out there that is adopted by a lot of jurisdictions, and this is a provision that is in a lot of those cities' ordinances. I don't feel like I can offer a recommendation for you in terms of whether or not to adopt it. I would just say a lot of jurisdictions have adopted it, and because of the council action, I'm bringing it forward to you.
Have you got any rationale why they've adopted it? Very simply, what I'm understanding is that the bees have a directional path that they pursue, and the fence assists them in going into a different direction?
Well, I think it's my understanding it requires a 6-foot fence, and that's so that if there is a direction or a path that the bees are taking, that it's at least high enough that it would not interfere with somebody walking on the sidewalk or driving or what have you. That's my understanding of the basis for it.
One more question is that if it is, I don't know if this will work in all applications, but in the general scope of things, if the hives are directed towards the backyard or towards a back fence, I understand we still have alleys to to deal with and those kinds of issues. But would that be enough or suffice the issues for the flight path?
I don't know if I could say one way or the other. I'm sorry.
That's very right.
I mean, there are in the current hobby beekeeping provisions. There's multiple regulations about placing them outside of the setbacks. That's to avoid this problem. That's one thing that's to avoid this problem. There's a discussion about encouraging screening between the hives and neighboring properties. That's to address the same concern. So this fencing of flyways is another way that some jurisdictions have addressed the concern of bees leaving the property. But there's already provisions that you all have adopted that speak to this particular concern.
Thank you. And if I can ask Mr. Owens a question. Thank you. Mr. Owens, since you're kind of our resident experts, can you address some of the questions that I've asked already about the flight path of the bees and the understanding of once they leave the hive? That's my understanding, is that they have somewhat of a directional path to go pursue, and then with this fence or some kind of an obstruction, it would alter their flight path.
Well, you can certainly halt it by putting a fence around it so they have to go straight up. The problem with it is that as the weather changes and the wind currents change, the sun, there's so many things that affect the bees and their flight pattern. But normally what happens when the bees come out of the hive, first off, the hives are usually about no more than 8 or 12 inches above the ground. When they come out of the hive, they go up just like a jet taking off on a runway. And they go, I don't know how high, some places they go quite high, but they go out of the range of people or vehicles or anything that is in that area, because what they're looking for is they're looking for forage. They're looking for a flower. And if they know where it's at, they're going to go up and over and come down to the flower. Bees don't search out places where people are. They look for food. That's what they're out there for. Or pollen, pollen and nectar. That's what they're out there for. And I have mine in my backyard. I got my bees sitting right in the very back of my backyard, and they're pointed towards my house. And if you stand there and look at them on a sunny day, you'll see them coming out of the hive, and they go up over the top of the house. My house is a 2-story house, so they go up quite a ways. And I've got other trees around there. They go over those as well, and that acts as a screen. I mean, that has an effect on the bees. If they go to the left, they go down my driveway, they got a straight shot towards Canyon Lake Drive. But I don't see any bees down there. There's nothing for them down there. But what we're talking about with the screening thing is that it would be an interpretation type thing. If you want to come out to my house and look at my bees, you could make an interpretation that in a particular area, I need to put up a screen. In another area, I don't have. And everybody's property is different. And a lot of places, it's a very low density population where people keep their bees. And there are a few where they're in a higher density, but for the most part, they're in a residential area and they're confined to backyards, and people don't even know they're there. I do know that my neighbors like the honey I give them in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. I think you've answered all the questions I need. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we've vetted this process to the nth degree. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard that saying, don't try to fix something that's not broke, or don't poke a sleeping bear or any of that stuff. But it just, it begs me the question of, yeah, there may be a lot of people out there that have these ordinances that have the bee nets, but I'll guarantee you beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's way more of them that don't have any ordinance. I think we've vetted this thing out, we've passed it, let's see how it works. Let's let these guys go. I've been in Rapid City since 1970, I haven't even seen a beehive, much less had a complaint about it. I think we've had one complaint, and I've been on the council for 5 years. One complaint that I know of a bee getting into somebody's backyard over whatever. I just think we're trying to fix something that isn't broke. So I appreciate the council, just move on. Just don't revisit this thing anymore.
And I think the motion is denied. Before we go to the vote, I just would say, I think in Carla's defense, this was brought forth as something the council had asked for during the prior discussion of this, and we never got it included, so she thought she was just addressing something we'd asked for and we hadn't gotten in there, but obviously we're not in favor of it, and I just want to make sure I appreciate your work nonetheless for responding to us. So, any further discussion? Motion is to deny. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to go to number 20, how about? Dang it. Motion number 20, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign addendum number 1 to agreement between the City of Rapid City and the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates for completion of powwow grounds and Native Arts Market funded through part by the Rapid City Vision Fund. Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Darla Drew, second by Steve Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Everybody, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.